Hello everybody. Welcome to Unbiased America Live. The main competition for Fox News is the 5, except we're the 18, and our show is a lot more informative. I was watching that today, and their news analysis was horrendous. But anyway, we have a special
The part about eminent domain, Will?
Oh my God, I lost my mind on that part. All right, we could talk about that too. We could talk about the cruise ad, but we're here with an enlarged panel today. We have, Matt Palumbo's finally back from being classically liberal from his, the several-week hiatus. I think he was climbing somewhere in Nepal, climbing, the numerous mountains there with a big old sack of oregano. We also have Mike Lee from being classically liberal, who has the American flag flying in the background. How appropriate for a statist, and another favorite word of the left and the libertarian right, a jingoist. We have Kevin Ryan, who is in his mansion in Kennebunkport, Maine. He's also supporting Jeb Bush. He actually single-handedly, financed Jeb Bush's campaign in New Hampshire. We have former Miss Minneapolis and Alpha News reporter Julia Erynn here today too, to give the show some sort of credibility, because the rest of us are pretty much losers. We have Grant Phillips from We Are Capitalists and the Modern Libertarian, who's drinking out of a jar, and I guess that's what hipsters do in Philadelphia. And we have Julian Adorney, who is a writer with the Mises Institute. He wrote for The Hill, The Federalist, Town Hall, The Daily Caller. And you had a new little piece out recently on comparing Trump to FDR, and we could start off with Trump because he just won in New Hampshire, which I'm not shocked. I don't know anyone who's shocked. It's a Rockefeller Republican state. They're mainly moderates there, so that's not surprising to me. But in what areas would you say, Trump has similarities to FDR? And then we'll get the rest of the goons in here. Sans Julia. Go ahead.
All right, I would say mostly personality. Trump's very anti-immigrant, very xenophobic, very, hate anyone who's not, white Christian. FDR is largely the same way. I mean, FDR wanted to ban immigration to people, or restrict immigration to people who had, like, quote, blood of the right sorts. He was deeply distrustful of the Japanese, and, one of the reasons he locked up, 100,000 of them during World War II was that he considered Japanese biologically untrustworthy. FDR was, an anti-Semite who dismissed, when Jews were trying to escape from Germany, he actually barred the gates pretty much to the U.S. and wouldn't let them come. And he dismissed their fears of Hitler as, quote, Jewish whaling. So I see a lot of similarities there. I'll see a lot of similarities in that, Trump, no one actually knows what Trump believes, because on the one hand, he seems like he has no filter, but part of that is that he'll just spout off anything he thinks, regardless of whether it's true or not. And he'll contradict himself the day after. First, John McCain was an idiot because he got captured and he wasn't a war hero. The very next day he was a war hero because Trump got a lot of flack. So Trump is just a giant. Trump's kind of borderline sociopathic liar. And FDR was the same way. FDR, he didn't actually run on any kind of liberal big government campaign. He ran on the campaign. He lambasted Hoover for his tax and spend policies and for trying to essentially manage the country in Washington. And he picked a libertarian vice president. The reason he did these things was because they were popular. One of his advisors actually has a quote. I'm going to friggin' butcher the quote, but it's something like, if FDR saw today that cannibalism was popular, he'd have a roast at the White House, tomorrow morning. The guy he had no morals, and all he wanted was power. He didn't really care about separation of powers. He didn't care about nice hat.
Yeah, thanks.
What is happening?
So I consider Trump and FDR are tied for about the worst thing this country's seen that in the past 100 years, I would say.
Okay, I think I'm going to challenge you here, and I think it's a total stretch to compare Donald Trump to FDR. FDR, was a terrible president if you want to talk about anything other than conducting the war. certainly on economics, definitely on separation of powers, definitely on the Constitution. He has a record to show. Donald Trump doesn't have a record. On my biggest problem with him wasn't immigration. It was internment of American citizens based on their ethnicity. That's my biggest problem. But it is a stretch to conclude that because Donald Trump wants to close the border and exclude illegal immigrants, that's the same as internment, or to say that because he wants to restrict or have a moratorium on Muslim immigration, that somehow that's similar to what FDR did. And in my defense, it's that the onus is on the immigrant to coming here to prove why they should be admitted to the United States, that no one, irrespective of religion, race, gender, has a right to be in the United States of America. I don't know what Trump would do when he's in office. I don't know, but I would defend Trump on those grounds. As for the allocation of resources, it's somewhat similar, but it's definitely not to the degree of state control that FDR had, and him implementing, the FHA, which had brazenly racist policies. The same with the Public Works Administration, which were to exclude, blacks and to desegregate communities that were largely integrated by the market before. So that, the work of FDR was so egregious that it's really hard to tie Trump in, if that's fair.
That's true. Actually, that's one of the things that always kind of surprises me, because I grew up very liberal. So the first 19 years of my life, I freaking idolized FDR. My parents did, all my classmates did, and now I read this article and everyone's telling me yeah, Trump is a vile, racist, xenophobe, but how dare you lump him in the same class as FDR? He's not
what do you mean first of all, you grew up liberal. Aren't you 20? Well, how old are you?
25.
So you for 19 years you were liberal, and now you're diehard anti-liberal.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow, how did that happen?
I learned economics.
That'll do it.
I took a micro and macro course in college, and micro was cool because it showed you all about the gains from trade and how wage floors and price ceilings and stuff creates net waste. And then I took a macro course, and they were talking about the benefits of Keynesian interventionism, and I asked my buddy, well, this stuff works, right? Why aren't we seeing massive gains from this massive stimulus package? And he turned me on to Henry Hazlitt, and from there it was there's no going back.
Oh man, how many of my liberal friends I had read Henry Hazlitt and it didn't change their mind?
Really?
Yeah, they don't. I don't think they get what it's saying, but I don't think they care. A lot of these people, it's just ideology over whatever they read. They don't care about that.
I've noticed though that people have more of they're more apt, and they have more of a tendency to change ideologies when they're young, when they're 19, 20, 21. After that, there becomes a period of time when they're just never going to change.
Yeah, that's one thing Don Bordeaux talked about, and this was kind of horrifying to me because I always wanted to change everyone's mind, and he said that once you turn 29, you're toast. No one's going to convince you. So his target audience is 19 to 29.
I wanted to get to the next point, and that's related to Donald Trump, and that you and Grant were working together on, was Trump favors some form of government health care. He's very unspecific. Who isn't unspecific is Bernie Sanders, saying that a single-payer health care system will make it more affordable. But isn't the problem now? And you and Grant, I'll get Grant, and you can go first, and then Grant on this. Government health care, isn't that the problem at this point? Is that government is creating conditions that raise the cost for health care, and that it would be to think that government can somehow reduce these costs by intervening even more is crazy.
Yeah, pretty much. I like to compare. I don't focus on international aspects, which Grant's the expert in. But domestically, I like to compare, veterinary care with, more traditional health care. And the difference is that one has massive insurance and one doesn't. And veterinary care, costs have been going steadily down for the past, 20, 30 years. Quality goes up. You can go in, you can pay cash, and prices are affordable. Even if your treasured pet is dying, you pay $400 for a surgery. Whereas, because we have this massive, kind of state-sponsored insurance apparatus, and because we have, all these ridiculous interventions, in human healthcare, I guess. You break your leg and it's $27,000. You go down to The hospital, you pay $3,000 for an ambulance ride. You pay $25 for an Advil. It's insane. The pricing mechanism is, there's so many layers between like the payer and the provider that there's no real pricing mechanism.
Mm-hmm. That people are divorced from the prices so that they can't accurately, assess costs to them and choose based on those prices. Am I correct, Julian?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you mean? Okay. Grant, you were doing some work on this too. Explain to me the logic, though, of, say, a guy like Bernie Sanders or a guy like Trump that say that lowering the costs of healthcare require the same entity that's raised the costs in the first place. Where are they getting this idea from? Is it that people, just like any other time, they don't like the prices of something, they blame the market as opposed to the actual entity which is causing the increased prices?
Yeah, well, what's really interesting about both their plans, in relative to what America has right now, we're sort of basically half socialist. Half the industry is funded by the government. And then they want to take it full socialist. And if you look at countries that have gone that far, the idea that going more socialist, the only benefit you get from that is increased access to care in the sense that the cost is less. Not necessarily the quality or the lead time that you have to wait for an appointment or anything like that. But also the way that their plan is structured to the United States isn't necessarily won't necessarily result in reduced costs. You know, we have an entire industry built around it, unlike Europe, Canada, and places like those where liberals cite all the time. So you would really be imposing a lot of costs on a lot of people, and I don't think that, based on the experiences that are currently going on in other countries, which, yes, they have lower costs, and that is their strength, that is their strong suit, they don't necessarily have better outcomes in a lot of ways. And I don't think that, I think lowering the cost is just a pejorative. It doesn't really mean anything. It just makes people think, oh, I'll have, access to health care. Yeah, it will benefit somebody, but as a whole, I don't think it's very beneficial to us.
Well, let me ask you this: we have Medicare now for older people, right? 65 and over. But the Medicare reimbursement rates are so low that some doctors won't take Medicare patients. And if they do take Medicare patients, isn't it true that they pass the costs on to other people that aren't receiving Medicare, so that they have to make these costs up somehow?
Like what Julian said, that's one reason you pay like $27 for a Tylenol or $50 for a Band-Aid, because they're going to get reimbursed for those things at the full rate. So they're going to charge you as much as they possibly can. When the actual surgery, they might get reimbursed at half the rate of what the costs they incurred. So yes, they definitely pass it on to other people. And then private insurers piggyback off that practice because they're essentially competing with Medicare in the sense that they're in the industry and they're in, they're in the marketplace, and they mimic their practices in a lot of ways, and that sort of creates its own other additional costs.
Julia, as a reporter, I don't know how often you've ever covered universal health care or a lot of these, quote-unquote, government's going to make things affordable housing, affordable health care, affordable this and that. But when you're dealing with people, do they believe that things are actually going to be affordable or free, or I mean, is that what you get from people, and definitely, certainly from politicians that make the same claims?
It happens more on college campuses, actually, which just blows my mind. But in Minnesota, we have something called MNsure, which is sort of our own version of the Affordable Care Act. There's some politicians in Minnesota, the Republican response is sort of, let's just go back to the Affordable Care Act. Why do we have our own version? And I'm like, how Republican of you? And but it's what's most surprising is that the same people that say, wow, I can't believe how much my health insurance has gone up, are the exact same people saying, wow, the Affordable Care Act is such an amazing thing. And it's like they don't make the connection, including some of my own family members.
Are the Republicans saying, why don't we go back to Obamacare because it's more affordable than MNsure?
Pretty much, yeah.
Julia, I have a question for you. One thing I found is that, so in a lot of these health insurance, Medicare and Medicaid, basically the federal government will give states money to allocate it. So if you're running for office, right, and you want to, you're against Medicare, you can't really be against it because you're telling your constituents, I'm against what you've already paid taxes for, which understandably they'd expect benefits from that. Is that how MNsure works, and how other health insurance programs in your state work?
Yeah, for the most part, it's pretty much government-funded health insurance. And we also have something in Minnesota dealing with Medicare and Medicaid, and so it's really complicated. It's hard to navigate, and I can almost see why people just kind of go with what the rhetoric is telling them and what the politicians are telling them, rather than what logic would tell them.
Okay, so is MNsure, again, so it must be molded after like what Massachusetts has too, like the Romney Care that they have there, I'm sure, to a degree, which is what ultimately Obamacare was molded after. And that the point you brought up, Grant, was that that's how most federal programs work. It's, here, take this money that we've already taken from you, and then you have to accept these mandates along with it.
Yeah, that's not just in healthcare.
Right. So it's hard for governors to say, I don't want to take any of the money that my constituencies already paid.
That's huge for our infrastructure and Social Security as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when MNsure was passed, it was just amazing being at I was an intern at the time, being at the legislature and sort of hearing the arguments of people saying, why are we adding this to the already sort of whirlwind world of affordable health care? Why are we making our own? Why are we doing this? Why aren't we trying to, do something in our state to take us away from this instead of making it even more complicated for people? But those were very quickly stifled out conversations.
Kevin, this is interesting because you certainly, with your French doors and your foyer, which is a French word that I'm not even sure I know what that means, and you most likely have an armoire, which I heard somebody say with a duvet, all these French things, which means you're rich. You could subsidize other people, but do you think that's fair that you as a rich person needs to pay for everyone else?
It's not fair unless it's, and I'm going to sound like a classic libertarian here, but it's not fair unless it's voluntary. If you take a look at the way the medical system has worked for a long time, people who can't afford to pay for their care still get care. I mean, there was a system in place where people voluntarily contributed their time. Doctors did, hospitals did, and certainly a lot of the Christian, the Catholic hospitals do this. So there is a system in place in which people can subsidize other people voluntarily. Now, whether we need to include people, people's taxes to do that is ridiculous. I just want to mention one more thing, though. Something we're leaving out in terms of the rising cost of healthcare is insurance, and I think it's an even bigger culprit than government. If you want to look, I hope you guys can see this, and there's not much glare or anything. Can you?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, that's right in World War II. That's healthcare costs in America, and right around World War II, when the government started imposing wage ceilings and saying you can't pay your employees any more than this and so forth. The companies decided to get around that by offering health care, and so they would pay healthcare insurance for their employees. I know a lot of people know this as a benefit, as a way of getting employees, as a way of competing for employees. Ever since that time, ever since that moment in World War II, there was 10% of Americans using health insurance. As soon as that happened, the costs started to rise. Today, there's 85% of Americans use health insurance instead of paying out of pocket, and the costs have never been higher. The reason is when you pay through a third-party system, you're not directly comparing prices. It's very difficult to compare prices when you're paying through insurance, through third-party insurance. And the problem is, we're paying for things that we don't normally buy insurance for. I mean, would you buy insurance for a light bulb to go out? No. But essentially, that's what you do when you buy this massive, all-encompassing insurance plan, like Obama's now mandated, that covers everything, including, very small medical procedures that we could all pretty much pay out of pocket if we needed to.
So it's instead of an insurance plan, it's more like a prepayment plan.
Exactly. It's not insurance. Insurance has lost
right.
what its intention was, which was to pay for things that you couldn't pay for.
Kevin, I completely agree with you. Like my general framework on the issue and how it exists today is that the connection between employment and insurance, and then the addition of Medicare and Medicaid, saturates demand so much so that a very, very regulated supply side, the only outcome you could ever conceive by the law of economics is a rise in the price level. People just go there for headaches, go to the doctor for a headache. Well, there's $100 of administrative costs that go along with that for a 10-minute doctor's visit. So it's kind of basic economics in that regard and how insurance acts in the market.
Yeah, and interestingly, when you add a copay, even if it's only a couple % of the total cost of the procedure, people stop going to get it done as often. Because they know, all right, I don't really need this done. I don't want to waste my $5 copay or $20. Now they're up to like $100 for some people's policies. But copays show that when you actually have to pay out of pocket, you will do a better job of rationing your own money and of finding alternatives, or of not wasting your scarce resources, basically.
Before I get Mike in on this, so I know knows a lot about this, I want to bring up the point that you said that when they had wage ceilings during World War II, that even at that time, when it was against the law to add, to pay workers more, they found ways around it by offering benefits, in which case kind of shatters the narrative that these are greedy companies that need to be regulated in some means today by having minimum wages and so on, and that competition, as opposed to greed, really dictates, how much somebody's paid, how much labor is paid. But Mike, we talked about this before. You brought up in the past tethering, and government mandates of tethering health insurance with employment, and how that adds to costs. And I think you brought up at one time. To the point that we were talking about, I brought up that why is insurance, your car insurance is really if something happens to your car. Generally, if you hit something or someone else, or this catastrophic accident that happens, not if I bump into a, if I'm driving backwards and I hit into a telephone pole, or if I have an oil change. You know what I mean? These things typically aren't covered by insurance. Would you know, going back to how it was tethered to employment and how it correlated kind of into becoming a prepayment system even before Obamacare kind of made it so?
Yeah, the point that Kevin brought up is a point that I brought up a lot, especially going back to World War II when it was tethered to employment. And of course that all started because the government put caps on wages, trying to make sure that the most talent would work for the government during World War II. And I brought up the point many times that you just brought up, comparing what's lost in the debate is people say, well, you have a right to medical care. Well, you don't really have a right to medical care, but what's gotten lost is what is the point of insurance. Insurance and medical care aren't the same thing. And I've used the car insurance analogy a lot. The point of car insurance is you get into a catastrophic accident, that's what car insurance is covering you for. If you total your vehicle, if you have a major loss, that's the reason you have car insurance. You don't have car insurance because you need an oil change or because you need to get your tires rotated. Those are routine maintenance things, just like a regular doctor visit would be. If car insurance covered those things, if let's say we mandated car insurance to cover those things, people would be separated from the cost. They'd be getting needless oil changes, needless tire rotations, new sets of tires every couple of months, and you would see prices start to skyrocket. That's not the point of insurance, and insurance and healthcare aren't the same thing. So I think, one, we have to stop conflating insurance with healthcare. Access to care is not the same thing as insurance. Everybody has access to care. You could before anybody had insurance, you could get medical care, whether that was through a private charity or whether there was subsidies. There was always access to medical care. Doctors would volunteer their time. Rand Paul went down and did pro bono surgeries. So access to care and health insurance aren't the same thing, and what insurance is for has gotten completely lost in the last half a century.
Right. So instead of when I go for a checkup, I pay cash, and then this would have the market mechanisms would dictate that I'm going to call doctors and say, what do you charge for a checkup? They're going to tell me this is what I actually still do. I call and I say how much for this or how much for that, or I'm sick. I had the flu a couple weeks ago. I called a couple of doctors and said, hey, I have the flu. I might need antibiotics. What's it going to cost for you to check on me? They give you a price, and I shop around. And they're thrilled that they're getting cash. Number one, I mentioned this before the show because they don't have to. It's not going through all those, the red tape of an insurance company and the reimbursement rate. I don't know what the reimbursement rate of our insurance companies, but it's a lot lower than me handing them $80 and then paying. I think I paid like $15 for antibiotics.
I did a post on this once, and they found, I did some research, and they found that if you actually pay with cash, you a lot of times end up paying less than even a copay.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw the article. I think it was in the LA Times, but it was like, I think if you just Google like LA Times medical cash discounts, they're talking about that. You can get like, well over 50% off, or in some cases I think it was even like 90% off, just by paying cash. You're cutting out all that overhead, and I guess it's just a lot easier for hospitals. So.
Yeah, hospitals and doctors. I mean, this is what I did. I had catastrophic, which was $80 a month in California, just in case. And then I would just go shop around for if I had to do. I think the thing that cost the most was blood work, but you would only have to do that once a year at my age, and I think that cost $300. If I go to the doctor for one checkup, they cost me $50. So for the whole year with the checkup and everything, to see if there was anything even wrong, it was $350 plus the $80 a month I had to pay for a catastrophic.
Sounds like it should be higher. I know you engage in a lot of risky behavior.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, you mean daring things, like motorcycle racing in my Ferrari. Yeah, I do that all the time.
Working out too much.
Working out too much.
Do you parkour?
Molesting homeless bums.
Well, that comes after all my other real healthy, overly, perhaps too healthy. You're right. That could be dangerous too. Now I forgot what I was getting onto, but it was something about Matt Palumbo. Oh, you, yes. You had wrote, I think it was in The Conscience of a Young Conservative.
Great.
When you wrote that about 15 years ago, when you're about 8 years old. And you did compare health, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did national health insurance and medical care rates, and I think you compared them to the health service in England and Canada, correct? Was that in that one, or was it?
It was kind of more general, just U.S. versus socialized, but.
Right, and what were your conclusions in that book? They were similar to, I think, what Grant and Julian are doing now.
So I actually did.
If you remember.
I think I did a third of that chapter on why American healthcare is so expensive, and actually you guys kind of covered that pretty well. But the first section was kind of like a socialized medicine myths, so it's arguments we hear in favor that are kind of nonsense, so that, I don't know what the hell is. I split up the book. He's got part one up.
Pure myths. There you go.
There you go.
But no, the first part was talking about just basic socialized medicine myths, like that people in countries with socialized medicine have much longer lifespans, they have much lower infant mortality rates, things like that actually have nothing to do with our healthcare systems. It's more the fact that we measure infant mortality different than other nations, and we have more murders and suicides and car accidents, so that's why we have lower lifespans, not socialized medicine. And then the second half is more on areas we are superior to socialized medicine. Even though we're quasi-socialists. So you look at cancer survival rates, and we're significantly ahead of Europe in that regard. I think Grant actually had a post that you're like twice as likely to leave the hospital with a foreign object inside of you if you go to a hospital in Canada versus the U.S.
Boy, I just dream about going to a hospital in Canada then.
Yeah, so I mean things like that, and
see what I did there?
Yeah, I think the only argument I could find in favor of socialized medicine is that there's less medical bankruptcy in those countries. But I guess but most medical bankruptcy in this country, it's not like $50,000 in debt. It's like someone goes into debt with like $10,000 and a few thousand of it's medical related.
Right.
So, yeah.
I want to ask you another question. People are saying the same. We have the Bernie crowd now. It's free healthcare and free college.
Yeah.
And a lot of my argument is, well, for the poorest among us, college is virtually already free. Would you agree?
Yeah, I know. Community college, I think the average cost nationally is about $2,000 a year. If you make under $80,000 a year as an individual, you can apply for, I think it's like a $2,500 tax credit towards college if you go full time. So that alone would cover community full time, and I think most state schools are 4 to 5 a year. And that, of course, doesn't include Pell Grants or any other income-related aid or any other the millions of scholarships that probably exist. Well, not millions, but millions of dollars in scholarships that exist. So,
Kevin,
I think
go ahead,
free college. So I was just going to add free college. I think is a middle-class entitlement. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would actually disagree with that. I think that mostly college is actually very expensive for the poor, and the reason is again government, because all these there are all these scholarships out there. There are Pell Grants, there's student aid, there's whatever it is. Those forms can be really hard to navigate, though. I mean, you have to submit, like 5 different forms. You have to have your parents help you. If you're really poor and like your parents are in jail, that's kind of a tough prospect. Mostly.
So you're saying it's not free enough, then? It should be just get the money without filling out a form.
I think those forms should be there as an intelligence test. If you can't figure that out to appreciate, you can't go to college.
Should there be barriers to entry to free money? Is the next. But go ahead, Julian. I'm sorry.
I've read it badly before with government. But yeah, I would say that mostly what government does is, you pump money in, you pump subsidies in, and what that does obviously is raise the price. And actually, it was liberal Christian Science Monitor that did like the hardcore reporting on this and found that $1 increased student aid translates to like 90 cents of increased tuition. And so when you have like really poor kids who may not have families, who may not have the like electronic ability to like navigate all these forms, they're stuck with this like enormously high like government inflated sticker price without the ability to actually like navigate any of the student aid. So you're basically screwing them twice.
Mm-hmm. I would agree and disagree. Only insofar as you really shouldn't go to college if you can't function, if you can't fill out a form or fill out a FAFSA. But I see what you're saying, and I mean, go ahead. Filling out a 30-minute FAFSA and getting with your parents, I think, is a lot simpler than actually working and paying for your school, like what some people would do. I know that at times I was poor, but just the amount of money that I made, they required me to pay. It wasn't total, but it wasn't enough that I could afford. The only way I could actually afford school was to actually stop working, and then all of a sudden it became affordable. These are the incentives they create. Is that don't produce while you're in school. Just stop. We'll pay you. And like you said, you're right. You are spot on about one thing. They give this huge pool of money that that's available for people to go to school, and then they think that somehow colleges are going to have an incentive to lower prices. That's just insane. You know what I mean? It's just, well, here's free money. Okay, schools, try to lower your prices. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what you're writing over there, Grant, but I was going to get to you next, and I forgot what it was. Oh no, I actually wanted to stick with Julian, and I wanted to start talking about New Hampshire.
All right.
And I wanted to get your, you were a Ron Paul supporter, correct?
Yeah.
And did that translate into supporting Rand Paul this election cycle?
I mean, sort of. Like with Ron Paul, I was like dedicated. I was like a caucus, chair guy, whatever it is, a precinct captain, and I donated like $100, even though I was a college kid. That cut deeply into my beer money, so that was tough. And with Rand Paul, I supported him for a while. Back in 2013, he was awesome, but now, seeing him come out in favor of banning immigration, and seeing him come out in favor of, or banning immigration from like certain countries, and seeing him come out in favor of bombing Libya or whatever, it's like I kind of hope he wins, but I'm not gonna like lift a finger to help him do it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So you would go to the polls and vote for him?
Maybe. I mean, if I didn't have anything better to do that day, like if I was gonna get beer with a friend and they canceled and I was like sad, I'd be like, all right, maybe I'll go to the polls.
So is his issue that he's not like pure enough? Like he's not he doesn't follow? Okay.
Yeah, he seems to be trying to become like another like Me Too Republican, except he has some like minority outreach and he talks a little about the NSA every now and then. And to me, that's just not enough.
Okay. Well, as a libertarian voter, what would be enough of Rand Paul to do? Would it be to, say that I don't? Because it's a fine line. I mean, if he wants to, the thing that I never got with libertarians is about minorities and how somehow he's going to help minorities. I don't understand how capitalism itself and supporting the Constitution doesn't help minorities. What more can he do? Is he supposed to go into these communities and give them free eye exams?
No, he does. Like the idea that capitalism helps poor people is kind of a novel argument. It's not really accepted around the country. So what he's doing, he's not like going into minority neighborhoods and like promising them free stuff. He's telling them how capitalism benefits them and how government kind of keeps them poor and kind of keeps keeps kind of a price ceiling on them.
But I just think that minorities just happen to be the poorest among us for certain reasons, mostly government. But I mean, I don't know why the message of liberty and free trade, and markets, and just personal responsibility and accountability are different to people because of their skin pigmentation. I just think that trying to pander to certain groups And Rand Paul did this. I think he pandered to quote unquote minority groups with things that were specifically outside of his power, like who can vote that's left to the states, and criminal statutes that are left to the states, which I think you really don't even need to mention. Just stay on message. I think stay on the constitutional message of what are your rights and natural law and individual liberty and state sovereignty. And I think that works. I mean, Ted Cruz has kind of proven that to a degree. He's not out really just necessarily talking about minorities. But Grant, I'll get you in on this.
Yeah, I completely disagree with you. I think what Rand Paul did to reach out to minorities is huge. Like, especially from a GOP standpoint. I mean, you're talking about. I totally agree with you in the sense that that's the message that should be spreading. But for a GOP candidate to have that kind of reception in a minority neighborhood, carrying that message is, I mean, that's impressive.
What message?
I can't think of another GOP, including Ron Paul.
What message?
Of everything you just said, capitalism and individual rights and.
I didn't hear him say capitalism. I heard him say that nonviolent offenders should be able to vote.
Well, you went to every inner-city event that Rand Paul ever hosted.
No, I don't. You know what?
You don't know what he
said.
So
now you're saying.
You don't know what he said. You just saw what was ever published.
Okay.
In the media. But my point is that someone with the libertarian.
Have you heard what Marco Rubio says? He talks about free markets and stuff to people, and then goes and doesn't do it. This is what it's not about. It's about appealing to a broader market rather than just going to the community and saying
someone carrying the conservative torch the way he did, libertarian conservative torch the way he did, into a minority community is unprecedented.
And yeah, no, that's true. But how did it work out for him?
I don't think you're going to sell constitutional law and everything else you're talking about.
No, I don't think you could sell it either when you drop out. When you drop out before New Hampshire. The message didn't work insofar as he made one primary. This is what I mean.
Why does that? It's to me it's
because identity politics
a bigger issue than just let's win a primary.
Identity politics doesn't work. It never worked in the past. It will never work.
Accepting a conservative into their community is a huge step in the direction of libertarian government.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's huge. I don't think
this is one of the reasons why
win the election, but it's a huge step. Let's say.
Yeah. This is one of the reasons that a lot of minorities tend to hate Republicans. It's not necessarily that the message is so bad. It's that Democrats actually put in the work to do outreach, whereas Republicans don't.
What outreach? What outreach are the Democrats doing? They don't need outreach in those communities. They have the votes. The lowest among us, the lowest socioeconomic.
Right, but they did outreach in the past.
Just let me finish.
They don't have outreach because they don't need to do it. Of course that's why.
Why don't they need to do it, though? The outreach is that they depend on government. They depend on government subsidies.
Democrat for 500 years.
Okay. All right. I got it. Rand Paul's outreach to the minority community is good for everybody, even though no one really cares, and he's been out of the race already after the first primary. But I see what you're saying. I don't know why you need to appeal to anybody based on their skin pigmentation, what's below their waist, as opposed to what's between their ears. I think you treat everybody as a human being. And when you pander, people know you're pandering. That's what I think.
You know what? You have to do that in politics, and that's huge for a conservative to do that.
Okay, so how do you have to do it in politics? Donald Trump's not doing it. How are they doing so well?
Bases in politics, really?
Every Republican election in the last decade, pandering politicians have been losing. The last non-pandering politician that really won anything was Reagan.
That's right. Correct. Thank you, Mike. Shut up, Grant. No, but I see what you mean.
You guys know me wrong in this show.
No, the thing I just don't get is libertarians use the language of the left an awful lot, and they minority communities, and we need to focus. And it's like we need to focus. Republicans don't care about blacks, and they don't care about. And it's literally coming. That's leftist to me. That's leftist rhetoric. That's class warfare. That's Marxist speak to me. That's how I see it. If it's not inclusive, it means nothing to me. If it's not inclusive,
it's so sensitive.
But no, it's not sensitive. We're talking ideas here, and I'm saying that constitutional principles apply to me just as much as they apply to somebody with a darker skin tone. That's what I'm saying. That's it. Thank you. Kevin, do you think it's necessary for Republican politicians to specifically reach out to minority communities? What reach out would they have?
Yeah, I do. It's
in what way?
It's politics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why do you think Hillary Clinton is going to get elected instead of Bernie Sanders?
Do you think the black vote is a large enough portion for her to win of the electorate?
Well, I think right now, Sanders now has a plan. I read this afternoon, has a plan. Apparently, back in the early '60s, he got arrested for protesting that blacks should have more access to the polls, and so they're going to really start throwing that out there and hoping it sticks in the African American community, and I think that what you're going to end up seeing is a fight for the black vote. And do I think it's right? Of course not. But that's politics.
Right,
that's how you get elected.
You're talking about Democrat candidates in a primary. I'm talking about Republican candidates.
Well, I do think if minorities knew what was right for them, they would probably be more apt to vote for a more liberty.
I disagree. I think they know exactly what's right for them, and that's why they vote for Democrat candidates.
No, you think so the blacks are doing so well in America today because of Democrats?
No, I'm not saying they're doing well. I'm just saying that they're rational voters, and they're voting for things. They're not voting for liberty. Liberty's not tangible. What's more tangible is subsidization.
So then how come they're still
how
come they're still at the bottom of the food chain in every possible?
It's not about whether we perceive them as a group.
Exactly. I know what you're saying now.
It can't I don't know why. It's a little something called white privilege.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Why? I mean, if we're talking from just purely an election standpoint, a political standpoint, why is reaching out to minorities politics and crucial politically? The black turnout in 2008 was the highest in their history, and how many turned out? Wasn't it only like 33% of the black population turned out to vote? We're talking about a really small voting bloc here.
Why? They do the same with Hispanics. They do that every time. You got to win the Hispanic vote. No Republican is every one.
Why do we have to do this?
It's because they vote. It's because it's such a lopsided vote. It's a lopsided vote. It's like 90%. They're always going to vote the same way. So even though it's a small portion of the electorate, it's a very predictable portion.
Mm-hmm. And you can see, and you could take that and look at who benefits the most from government largesse, and it goes along those same lines. They're basically voting for more government, bigger government. They're voting for things. That's what they go for. And it's a totally rational thing to do. That's what when you go and when you purchase anything, just as in an economic context, you do the same when you vote. Everybody votes for what I can get. What am I going to get out of this?
Rational if you have limited information.
The information is only your own self-interest. That has to do with everything in economics too.
So you're saying that minorities are. I mean, I know you're not saying this, but you're venturing into a weird argument here that minorities are in their own self-interest by voting Democrat.
Yeah.
How? You don't think they would be better off if they voted? If they
of course I do, but I do.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah, that's not why is that so? I don't understand why that's so strange.
Self-interest. They're voting on their perceived self-interest.
Right.
Exactly, their perceptions of, but their perceptions are based. Their perceptions are based on a low information.
I wouldn't say low information. If you're collecting money from the government, are you going to vote to not collect it anymore? Hey, let me get rid of this check. I'm going to go vote for somebody else.
If by doing so, in the long run, you end up with more prosperity, then yes. But it's hard. It's a hard. Listen, I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying, but I hope you understand what I'm saying.
I totally do. But you're looking at it from a standpoint of you have the information, and you're looking at them as groups. I, as Will Riccadella, irrespective of my skin color, if government's giving me stuff, housing, and they're giving me health care, I'm not going to go to the polls and vote against it. It's it's what they call implicit taxes. I'm not even. Why would I go work if I'm going to lose this stuff?
So wait, why are they called libertarians then? Why doesn't every college person vote for Bernie Sanders and his promise of free health care?
A lot of them are.
Yes, but not all of them. That's my point.
No, certainly not all. Not everybody votes Democrat.
But essentially, Will, you're making the argument that there's no way that anybody, when offered free anything, will turn it down.
It's free. I don't know.
So in other words, what's the point of being libertarian? What's the point of having a liberty view? If we're never going to convince people, all government has to do is throw Will some more cheese for cereal, and they're going to get your vote every time.
You're not looking at it from some people are self-interested in that they want less government.
Hey guys,
there are people that want less government. That don't want to pay taxes.
I was at a speech last night that got infiltrated and taken over, so I'm going to take over this discussion to talk about it. Because it is Monday. first time back in a few months.
The show just got interesting. Now let's talk about an infiltration at a college. Go ahead.
No, sorry to interrupt, but no, I'm not. But no, I was seeing Milo Yiannopoulos at Rutgers a few days ago, or last night actually, with is Ksenia how I say her name, Kevin? I don't know how to pronounce this girl's name. Is it Ksenia?
Ksenia.
Russian name.
Ksenia.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, I don't call her by her first name, obviously. Then.
I think the S is silent.
Okay, I thought the K was silent. So, yeah. All right, no, but we went. It's all him, and you could kind of tell within like the first 5 minutes who the troublemakers were going to be in the audience. Like there would be like a row of 4 or 5 people who weren't clapping. So probably like 10 minutes into the speech, I guess he finally started triggering people enough where they were going to protest. So like, some fucking girl just gets up out of nowhere and goes, "This man represents hatred," and does like a Braveheart face paint thing with like red paint, which I guess symbolizes period blood or some shit. And then like 10 other girls get up and do the exact same thing, and then like 10 Black Lives Matter people get up and start chanting Black Lives Matter and like overtaking the feminists. So it was like it was like the oppression Olympics going on in front of us. I was 2 rows back from it all, and then like half them left and flipped us all off, and it was it was such a funny night. But yeah.
By the way, can you get Julia? You're going to interview him next week.
Yes, I am. I'll be talking to him at the University of Minnesota, so I hope something just as interesting happens.
Can you get him to come on our show? Because I would love to have him on our show.
I will definitely pitch it. What is my selling point, though? Do you want to be harassed for an hour?
I was there at Rutgers, and I want to talk to him about it or something. I don't know.
We had Alan West on the show. Tell him he can be part of an all-star lineup.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah, why not? I asked Gavin McInnes, and he proceeded to never answer my email. I asked.
All right, well, I forgot the top. What were we on?
I'm sorry for hijacking your discussion for that 2-minute story.
Yeah,
we were on.
I mean, it's not like it's a real show anyway, so.
Well, I want to talk. I want to go to what's going on in the race for the presidency.
Go ahead.
All right.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to talk about it, but I just thought we should change topics because we haven't really talked.
All right. Well, let's go to what happened, and let me start with that's what I want to talk about. Thanks, Kevin.
Your mic is getting all staticky.
Yeah.
Is it? Hold on. Is that better?
Yep. Nope.
Sort of.
It's not.
There it is. That's fine.
That's better.
Is that better now?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Grant. I'll start with you, and then I'll go down the panel. Who benefited the most from the New Hampshire election? I've been watching the media about this, and it's largely been focused, obviously, on Trump because he did have such a huge win. He got 35% of the vote, and largely Kasich. I heard little murmurs about Cruz, but who do you think comes out the winner here? I mean, we know what the polls showed before.
Well, I think Vernon Supreme won, to be honest. Came in 4th place of the Democrats, all right? And the way this election's going, I mean, I think he's going to be my #1 guy.
Do you care about hygiene?
No, I don't. Have you seen my face? I got a whole, like, thing going, you know.
We have a real salivation problem here.
Yeah. No, but, you know, I think I saw what I expected. Rubio fell apart. I think Cruz kind of...
Do you think Rubio was a product of his bad debate?
No, I think
he's a product of a malfunctioning chip.
There you go. Rubio's a robot.
Wait, what do they call him? Robio?
Macrosoft.
Marcosoft.
Marcosoft.
That's pretty good. Julia, your take on New Hampshire and who benefited the most politically speaking?
I think that Hillary ultimately got the more super delegates, while Bernie Sanders may be showing that he's doing a little bit better among voters. It doesn't really matter when they have sort of their own special rules, the DNC. I think Hillary is the one who ended up winning in this case.
Okay, that's an interesting take. Julian, I hear everybody freaking out about Bernie won and Donald Trump won. And I mean, people don't realize that even after the Nevada conventions, there's still 95% of the delegates are still up for grabs. Yeah. I mean, this is really, it really is early. And the landscape is changing here. We have 6, the GOP people left. Hillary is solid in every other state. Kasich came in second in New Hampshire, but that's about it for him. I mean, what do you see happening here? Go ahead.
Honestly, I think Bernie's a big winner for exactly the opposite reason of Julia, because, Bernie came in, he won a popular vote by a lot, and then Hillary got more delegates, and everyone kind of realizes that now. That was all over the news, and a lot of kind of diehard, grassroots Democrats are realizing, this thing is rigged against us, and that's wrong. So that's going to pivot a lot of people towards Bernie.
That's a good point.
For, the country. But I think it's cool that people are becoming more and more disenchanted with both main parties, and I think New Hampshire was a big part of that.
This is what I want to ask you, Julian. There was reported that there was a lot of civil libertarian support for Bernie.
Yeah.
That a lot of Ron Paul voters turned out for Bernie. Does that attract you to him as well?
I mean, no. I think Bernie's.
He's going to break up the banks, Julian.
If only. No, I think Bernie's awful. I think that he may have integrity, but he doesn't understand economics at all. There was a petition a while ago of dear Bernie Sanders, read one economics textbook, just one.
Mm-hmm. You think he'd care? I don't think he cares. I think he knows economics. He just doesn't care.
Yeah, and wasn't that the dividing line between you, Julian, when you were a liberal supporter and when you stopped supporting liberals, was you became educated in economics? I mean, not a lot of people are educated in economics, so not a lot of people know that Bernie is such a moron when it comes to economics.
But also, I could see a lot of civil libertarians voting for Bernie because Hillary is just so awful on everything. She was one of the pioneers of the drug war in the 90s, I guess. Okay, second generation pioneers, whatever. The Cato Institute ranked her as the most neocon candidate in the race, which I thought was both fantastic and horrifying.
Really, even more than Jeb Bush?
Huh?
Even more than Jeb?
More than Rubio. It was insane.
More than Rubio, yeah, but by Jeb Bush?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
More than Trump, more than anyone.
I saw Cato came out with it was at their podcast. It was really interesting on what types of voters are voting for whom. And it was they did actually correlate the Sanders voters with Ron Paul voters.
Yeah, I can see.
I don't remember the specifics, but it's really interesting. If you have the podcast, it's the one that came out today. Kevin, I know you were paying attention to the debate and you were paying attention to New Hampshire. I'm interested in your take on who won. I know I have a take on it, but who do you think won?
Well, it's a double-edged sword because Trump definitely won New Hampshire. It was a huge victory. He didn't underperform. He actually, the polls were right when it came to him. But here's the thing: because he won and with such a large margin, you're going to lose at least 3 people from the Republican field. You've already lost today Chris Christie, and you've lost Carly Fiorina. You're going to lose, what's his name, Jindal. Not Jindal. Who's the... Carson. You're going to lose Carson.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's a good one, Kevin.
What?
You're the new Grant. Go ahead.
What?
Just screwing with you, Kevin. Go ahead.
I knew it was somebody who wasn't white. Anyways.
Oh, my God.
What? Come on. Jesus, I'm not having a good day. All right, listen. But listen to me. The fact is they're winnowing the field, which means Trump's going to face what the pundits have been saying since the beginning of the campaign, which is as soon as people start dropping out of the campaign, that support is going to consolidate with somebody other than Donald Trump. Now, I don't necessarily believe that 100%, but I do think it's going to go more to somebody else than to him. It's just a matter of who gets more before we really know the outcome of New Hampshire and whether or not this is going to benefit him or because so many people are dropping out, whether or not he's going to face a candidate that has more support now.
What do you feel about Rubio's position? I mean, this guy came in at disappointing 5th place.
Yeah, no, Rubio got hurt. He's the loser of New Hampshire, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, nobody thought that the 3 people at the bottom were ever going to do anything. So, yeah, they're dropping out. But Rubio had a lot to lose because of what he did in Ohio or in Iowa. And what's going to happen now is people are going to take a closer look at him, his donors are going to try to decide whether or not he's the real deal or whether he just had one good primary or caucus. And I think it really is going to boil down to whether or not people put their money into him or into Cruz or into somebody else. I don't necessarily think Rubio's supporters are going to go to Trump, but Rubio's hurting right now. He needs help.
Okay, Mike, you had obviously Donald Trump was the winner. This is what the polls were at. The polls, I think, third place was really kind of up in the air. I think some polls may have had Kasich in there, but he was well ahead too. Who do you think really came out on top? I mean, we know Donald Trump won big via votes, but who do you think really is? Who do you think came out of this? You think Trump's going to ride this momentum, or someone else will?
This is going to come off a little biased, but I actually do believe it. We spent all week talking about how Rubio was the winner of Iowa after he came in third place.
I knew it.
Was the winner of New Hampshire because he came in third place. But I really do believe this because this was a state that Cruz was not supposed to do well in. And getting close up to the election time, the actual vote, it looked like he might come in fifth place, maybe even sixth, depending on how the broke. It was so close there. He comes in third, and now we're pivoting to an area where Cruz has a lot of strength in the South and in some of these in places like Texas, where he's going to do really well. So he wins Iowa. He has a nice showing in New Hampshire, and now he's going back into his comfort zone. So I think if there's ever going to be an anti-establishment challenger to Donald Trump, Cruz is the most well-positioned now, and he had a great showing in New Hampshire. So I think going forward, Kasich, I mean, yeah, he should finish second place, but he has no organization outside of New Hampshire. So, yeah, obviously Trump was the winner, so I think it comes down to Trump and Cruz at this point.
Okay, that's kind of like it's along the lines where I was at. What about you, Maddie?
I don't know, man. No, seriously, I was zoning out that entire time. I'm just kind of reading the chat and flirting with Julia, so that's really all I was doing.
All right. Well, I agree with Mike. I think that Cruz spent, I think, with PAC money and his own money, $800,000 total in New Hampshire. Came out in third. Jeb Bush, I think, spent $35 million, of his own money plus PAC money. Rubio spent more there than Cruz, and he came out.
Kasich spent $17 million or something.
Right, Kasich, that was it. That was Kasich's last stand. He knew if he didn't do well there, that's it for him. But he's going into South Carolina, where Cruz has the better ground game again, like Iowa. He's more well liked, and there's more conservative voters. And you know what? Cruz only spent 30-something days in New Hampshire. He kind of knew he was, he wasn't going to be in there. He'd come in fourth or fifth place. I don't think he expected third. And if he wins, he could feasibly win in South Carolina. And what comes up after that? Nevada, right? Nevada comes up after that, and then you have Super Tuesday, March 1st. And I mean, that's kind of March is really where all the delegates are won. So if he's doing this well in New Hampshire, which has always been a Rockefeller state, and you had Kasich and Trump, Trump getting a lot of that anti-establishment that may have gone to Cruz, but also those guys are really splitting the establishment vote at the time. And there really is a small conservative vote. Go ahead, Kevin.
I just one comment. I want to get your thoughts on Bush, because the narrative now is that Bush his ground game in South Carolina is huge, or at least he's going to involve his brother and probably his father and so forth. But there's a new narrative that Bush is reborn.
That's the narrative now, because this is his last stand. You know what I mean? He's got his brother coming there. You know what I mean? This is it for him. If he doesn't do well, or if he doesn't at least show in South Carolina, he's done for. No one's going to give him any more money. Kasich can't make it. He's got no money either. Carson's going to be out here soon. I don't know how much of his campaign staff did he eliminate, Kevin? 40%, I think.
Yeah.
So it's getting interesting, and I think, if Rubio stays in, I think that's bad to a degree. What do you think, Mike? Do you think it's bad if the longer Rubio stays in for Cruz?
No, I don't think.
I don't either.
Not at all. I think that the longer Carson stays in is bad for Cruz. But I think Cruz could use Bush and Rubio all staying in the race. I think that benefits.
Right, I think so too. Now let's get to winners and losers. Mm-hmm. And let's start off with one of the losers on our panel, Grant Phillips. Do you have your winners and losers, or?
All right, so my loser of the week is going to be Gerald Friedman. He's the author of. He's not related to Milton Friedman, thank God. He's the author of Bernie
Just a
Sanders'
better economist.
Medicare. Yeah, Medicare for All plan. He is a fringe socialist economist who he himself admits that he's sort of a scapegoat. And his healthcare analysis is horrible. Our healthcare plan is horrible, and we're gonna make a video about it for We Are Capitalists in the near future. So watch out for that. My winner of the week is going to be Hillary Clinton because she made out like a criminal with the delegates that she got out of New Hampshire. I was really shocked to see that. I didn't think that would actually happen, equal delegates like that. So I want her to actually win the Democratic primary. I hope she does. I'll take her over Bernie Sanders.
All right. Okay, you'd take Hillary over Bernie. I'm the opposite. I'll take Bernie over Hillary. Julia, your winners. Oh, and let me tell Julian, we usually do winners and losers of the week. I'll pick on you last. You could just think of anything that you think won.
He had no idea what was going on, Will.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
I appreciate that.
Sorry, we did it in a chat, and I thought you already knew. Sorry.
I was just going to say 2 random names, honestly.
Yeah, you could do that. I'll give you time to think about it. You can come up with something great. Like Julia always comes up with something great.
Thanks,
Go ahead.
Will.
Yeah.
Well, my loser of the week is the American people, because even though they chose someone in New Hampshire, the DNC decided that they were going to give someone else what actually matters, all the delegates. So, haha to you if you're waking up to the political system now. My winner of the week is Matt Palumbo, because he finally wised up enough to borrow his roommate's computer to get a working microphone. So, good job, Matt.
All right, Kevin, go ahead. Winners and losers. And Julian, just give me a thumbs up when you're ready or whenever.
Oh yeah, for sure. Or you can just go down one. I'll have something whenever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kevin.
My winner is Donald Trump because he clobbered it in New Hampshire, and if you look at the polls in the upcoming states, he's leading big in every single one, and he's actually turning people who were doubters into people who are actually thinking he might actually get he might actually get the nomination, and I'm almost starting to agree because I can't find a poll that has him losing in any state that's coming up. And my loser of the week is the Free State Project. If you guys know about let me just give you a quick recap if you don't know about it. It started in 2001, and libertarians decided they were all going to move to a small state where they can actually make an influence and have an impact. And so they all decided to move to New Hampshire. And just a week ago, they passed the 20,000 signature limit that now effectively binds people who have signed the petition. It binds them into moving to New Hampshire. And a week after they passed that limit, they just nominated Trump and Sanders. I mean, really? You guys are really not off to a good start.
All right, Michael Lee.
Well, my loser of the week is kind of Kevin touched on. I was just going to say the people in New Hampshire. Because, I mean, the live free or die state apparently is full of populists that can be fooled by snake oil salesmen. So I was definitely going to go with them as my losers of the week. I mean, I know it's early, and I kind of disagree with Kevin in the fact that it looks like Trump's going to win this thing because a lot's going to change. But this week, the losers of the week are New Hampshire. My winner of the week, we already touched on this earlier. We had to talk about it, so we stole it. My winner of the week is Ted Cruz, who I'm getting more and more confident is going to win this nomination. So that's my winner of the week.
Over Rubio. Rubio was your guy.
I predicted Rubio, but Rubio's sliding in a state where he should have done better in. Rubio should have done better in New Hampshire. We could go with Chris Christie as the loser of the week, by the way, too, because he put all his eggs in that basket. But no, Cruz is showing in New Hampshire. It's going to come down to Cruz and Trump, and I think eventually Cruz has the ability to overtake Trump, so he's going to be my winner this week.
I just want to clarify, all the eggs that Christie put in his basket, he ate them.
And they were Canterbury eggs. So.
Yes, they were Canterbury eggs. Fat guys, that's what I mean. All right, Julian, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. All right. I would say winner was Trump, which is awful.
I didn't even want to name him my winner because I can't do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I kind of vomited a little bit there. Loser, I'd say like the two political parties. The two winners of New Hampshire were an independent who who wasn't a Democrat until 2 years ago, and a Republican who was a Democrat until 2 years ago. People clearly hate both political parties, but neither of these guys would be going anywhere.
Exactly.
I'm excited.
That's an excellent
That was
take
one of the best losers I've heard on the show so far, honestly.
Maddie, did we do you yet? I don't remember. You've been really engaged this whole time. So
Thanks, bud.
do you have any?
Yeah, my winner of the week is Austin Peterson because he hired the great intellectual Tony Stiles to his campaign. So I think his odds of winning quadrupled from 0.001% to 0.004%. So he's doing a lot better. Good decision on his part. Donate $3 to him if you can, by the way. And my losers of the week are Carly Fiorina and who's that other guy? Chris Christie.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought like crazy right now.
Okay. I have my winners of the week are Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware for for finally Peyton Manning, who has gone to the Super Bowl for years, who had the best offense every time he went. That defense would always blow it, except for the one time that he won, obviously. But finally he goes and he's got this squirt gun arm. Grant could probably throw harder than him, and his defense comes through and wins it for him. So I think that's cool, and that I think that I'm glad he won another Super Bowl trophy, even though he would have been fine if he lost the Super Bowl trophy anyway. But whatever, sports. My loser is the establishment of both parties, like Julian said, because they've enraged their constituencies to the point where people that probably have never voted before are actually voting. People are, and if you look at the polls, it's people who are most angry are from either party are voting for Trump or Bernie, and they're really sending a message to the the GOP establishment. This is your fault. Okay, that's why Donald Trump is there. That's why he can just say, "Make America great again." Call people the P word. Call reporters bimbos, and still be viable. It's thank you, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and Reince Priebus, whatever your stupid name is. And I'm tired of looking at that. Do you guys know who that is? You see him on TV, right? It's just horrible watching that guy talk. I mean, I'd rather punch myself in the face than watch him talk.
You should punch yourself in the face.
Yeah, let's see you punch yourself in the face.
Good one, Grant. Anyway, thanks for watching. We went a couple minutes over. We'll be here the same time, same place next week. You could follow Julian's work in the FDR article at thefederalist.com. Also, he has a page, Americans For Capitalism. Do you post a lot of your stuff there, Julian?
I mean, I post some.
Mm-hmm.
I post every new article.
Okay.
And I got backlog at The and Mises and a couple other places, I think.
And Grant, you're coming out with you're still doing the work on your government healthcare thing, comparing it to Canada and socialized healthcare, socialized medicine countries.
WAC's We Are Capitalists will have a video on that in probably the next coming couple weeks, and Julian and I are working on something together as well.
And you have some stuff on your page already too, right?
Yes.
On the Modern Libertarian and WAC?
Yes.
Okay, so people can find that there. I noticed we have at least 8 viewers, so hey, that's 8 people reading it. Okay, and Julia Erynn, you can look for her on Alpha News, and she has her own fan page, so it's just you can see her name down there, and you can just type that in and follow her stuff. She has some good reports on there. I watch it all the time.
Thanks.
It's true. I watch it. I want to know what's going on with Minshew. Is that what they call it?
Minshew,
Yeah, Minshew and all this fun stuff. A lot of things going on in Minnesota, guys. It's not just freezing cold there, okay? Sometimes.
Hey, and we interview presidential candidates. We're kind of fun.
And you're about to take over this show.
Woo!
And you're taking over the show. The only one here again with credibility. But thank you, and we will see you next week. Thanks, Julian.
Yeah, thank you.